Hello, all, and welcome. Over the years, we have seen many improvements in the learning and development field. One area that has always been a key L&D component is the Instructor Facilitation Service area. With me today, I have Dr. Guido Minaya, CEO and Chief Learning Officer for Minaya Learning Global Solutions. Dr. Minaya began his learning and development L&D career as an AT&T International Sales and Sales Management instructor. He then served as Director of Education Services for Lucent Technologies, Avaya, and Accenture in Latin America, Asia, and globally. In this series, we will focus on how the instructor facilitation field has evolved and changed in recent years. Stay tuned to learn more. Hello, Dr. Minaya. Thanks again for joining us on 5 Minute University.
My pleasure to be back, Dario. And I enjoyed the Women in Leadership series you recently hosted.
Yeah, thank you. Now, this series focuses on global instructor delivery, so let's get into it. In the learning and development space, there has always been the instructor facilitator service area. What are the key components of this service area from your perspective?
Yes, and again, this is a topic in an area that's near and dear to my heart, and a great place to start. So companies can have a small, medium, or large workforce to train. So it always starts with what's the business challenge the company's trying to solve for, and what's the right training to help solve for that challenge, right? It could be a leadership challenge, improve soft skills that the company desires, technical training, process changes based on innovation. It could be new services that the company's offering and new products, just to name a few. And this has been some of the key areas, even back as far as the 1800s when we first started with the Industrial Revolution. Now, other important aspects that a manager or training manager would need is forecasting the demand for the targeted training, right? How frequently and how many learners do we need to train over time? What are the desired training locations, right? It might be location specific. And if it's a multinational company, what other languages are needed? And again, based on scaling, what modality? Is it a combination of virtual or a traditional classroom, or is it just one or the other? So all of this helps a manager determine which trainers to use, how many to use, and to develop the basic training schedule.
Now, let's say some of those are already identified, forecasting the demand for the targeted training, the desired training locations. What are some next steps once you have the course topic defined, facilitator selected, and the schedule ironed out?
It goes back to the content, right? So if the course content is something that the facilitator has delivered in the past, then he or she just needs some refamiliarization with the content, right? So that might be the basic other dependency. If the content is new, then there's some level of the train the trainer process to consider, right? In some companies that have a number of instructors, you may identify, a lead instructor, a master instructor who can teach the other instructors the content and any nuances in the course. In other cases, if it's brand new content developed by an instructional designer, then one of the roles of the instructional designer is to walk through the content with the lead instructor or with all the instructors. And ideally, an instructor should get a good feel for the cohort that they will be teaching, right? The participants that they will be teaching. For example, are they new employees? Are they veteran employees? What's the job profile look like for those who will be attending the course? And an instructor can also send out a pre-course survey to get a better understanding of the cohort that they will be teaching. All of this helps with engaging the participants and where the real magic comes in, right, for a good instructor. This comes into play in terms of what kind of activities, exercises are part of the training that help not only reinforce the training, but keeps the students engaged in the topic. And as we've all seen, having a monotonous PowerPoint training presentation does not go over well.
No, not at all. That's why death by PowerPoint is a saying. How did the pandemic alter instructor delivery over the past few years?
Right. Well, I think our company's example is pretty representative of how it affected companies around the world. Right. I recall in late January of 2020, We had schedules for delivering training, face-to-face training in Asia, Europe, Latin America, and here in North America. And it was in the early February timeframe of 2020 where we first started seeing our face-to-face courses Asia cancel. And I thought this was odd, so I reached out to our Asia regional manager, and he shared, due to the virus impacting China, China-based sessions were all being canceled, and other Asian countries were following suit. And then we started seeing our courses in Europe cancel, right? So I reached out to one of our top instructors in Europe who shared the same thing. The virus was impacting various countries, and all face-to-face training, all travel was shutting down. And so I anticipated that it would happen in the Americas, and about a week or two later, all traditional classroom training was shut down globally. And even virtual training was put on hold until companies, of course, could better evaluate the impact of the pandemic. Things were at a standstill in terms of virtual training for us, for a number of months. Then we started seeing virtual training pick up in very late 2020. Then 2021 and 2022, all of our training that we were delivering was done in a virtual format only. And in almost every company that I know, of course, leverage Zoom, Microsoft Teams, WebEx, GoToMeeting, and other virtual platforms, not only for training, but for all of their meetings. So yes, it did alter how things were done.
Yes, many industries had to adapt to the new normal of being entirely virtual. What helped you adapt to this challenging situation brought on by COVID?
Yeah, well, I think we may have been in a good position of better understanding virtual training. I actually did my dissertation at the University of Pennsylvania back in 2005 on transitioning classroom instructors to virtual instructors. And my dissertation was titled "Who Moved My Classroom?" And basically, it was a qualitative, quantitative research study on 3 corporate university training teams, their instructors, focused on transitioning instructors from a traditional classroom model to a virtual training model. So, in that, we took into account the ABSTIPI instructor competencies for virtual training. We created a curriculum to help them better understand the virtual training model, and then we had them practice and show that they were competent, right, in this new modality. And during COVID, we were fortunate that many of our instructors already had a solid background in virtual training. And even one of our global teams had been teaching virtually for 3 years, prior to COVID. So all of this helped us adapt quickly into the only model that was available to us.
Now, with being affected by COVID and post-COVID now, were there any new best practices that you leveraged during COVID and post-COVID?
Yeah, I think we basically, since that was the only way to deliver courses in a live class environment, right? We did start improving our processes, right? So what to start with, virtual training, good virtual training is developed from the ground up to be in the virtual training modality. So fortunately for our new curriculums that our company was developing, we leveraged our instructional designers that had a great background with developing courses in a virtual training environment. So that's the key, because really, the instructor no longer can leverage, their observation of body language to take cues from the students on if they're having, an issue, if they're stuck on something. So now it has to be done in another way. And a good practice, whether it's built into the training from the onset or not, is that the instructor should be asking the learners a question every 4 minutes. And that way, the instructor is getting a view of how engaged are they? Are they answering properly? Do they need to go back and reinforce something? And the questions could be as basic as, a polling question with multiple answers. It could be a yes/no question, or other formats where the students can leverage their chat function. As you know, another good rule of thumb for classes with 15 or more learners is to use a producer or moderator, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a good rule of thumb. I support instructors as a producer on virtual training sessions for our own company. So
Exactly. With larger class sizes, it makes it harder for we've seen class sizes of, 25, not bad. Some class sizes of 30, 50, right? So if you can imagine, it's hard for the instructor to solve for technical issues with a class that size. And even fielding questions and responding to the relevant questions makes it difficult without a producer. So, producer moderator solves for these kinds of issues. For our international virtual sessions, we make sure that the producer moderator has the language skills appropriate for that country or for that region, right? So, of course, the moderator producer should rehearse with the instructor so they know how they're going to interact, how they're going to take action on different things that the producer moderator observes. And then another good practice that's pretty basic is that the virtual instructor has a second laptop computer which is logged into the course as a learner. And in this way, as the instructor is pushing slides from his or her laptop, he or she can glance over to the second screen and see, when are the students receiving that content, and can decide how to, move a little slower, let's say, if there's a lag, right?
Yeah.
So all of these are some good basics. And I hope, at a minimum, we began setting a foundation for our instructor delivery series.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Dr. Minaya, for setting the stage for this new series. On our next episode, we will talk about best practices in global delivery. Until next time.